Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Money Mindset Hub podcast. So I'm your host, Carla Townsend, and I'm a money mindset and success coach for female entrepreneurs who are ready to eliminate their money blocks and monetize their genius. So today I have the beautiful Sophie Jones with me, who specializes in working with outwardly successful individuals like CEOs, professionals, and entrepreneurs who, despite conventional success, they grapple with the feelings of unworthiness and self-sabotage. Her approach focuses on internal transformations, helping clients achieve success from within. Sophie's no-nonsense personality creates an environment conducive to openness, facilitating significant transformations for her clients. Sophie often says that finding her is not by chance, but a result of your higher self leading the way. I love that.
I
Welcome,
know.
Sophie.
As you read it to me, I'm like, I love my intro. Even though I wrote it.
Everybody says that. Everyone's like, is that me?
Yeah.
Well,
fun.
Sophie, I mean, where do we even begin? How about we take it back a little bit?
Yeah.
What got you into entrepreneurship?
That's a loaded, long question. But so I started in real estate when I was 23. I was really wild. And I'm from Utah. And so we have like a faith there. It's the LDS faith, Latter-day Saints. I wasn't raised of that religion. So it was interesting because it was like all or nothing. You were either like super religious or you were like super wild. And all my friends were in the snowboarding industry. We were wild, wild, wild. I made some questionable life choices. And I came home and I was like, there's just no way I'm going to go to like a 4-year university and make $40,000. Like I just refuse, which I've always been very headstrong. And so I had some mentorship come into my life, just divine timing, and got into the world of personal development and went down the road. You know, my mentor at the time was like, you can sell insurance or real estate. And I would always been into real estate and had my best friend's dad was like the king of real estate back in the day. I just had all the right things. You know, I think all the perfect circumstances fell into place. And so I got my real estate license when I was 23 and I grew real estate businesses in Utah, North Carolina, and twice in Texas. I had business coaches from when I was 23, and there's nothing quite like the satisfaction of when it's working. I think we hear in entrepreneurship, well, I think we hear a lot of things. We hear it's like either glitz and glamour, it's so easy, or we hear it's so hard and like, don't do it. And like, I really loved seeing who I was becoming. I just saw myself transform over and over and was successful at it and was willing to do the hard stuff and didn't lie to myself about what that was going to look like. And so that's how I got into entrepreneurship. And then 4 years ago, coming up on 4 years, I launched my coaching business and I'd been in business coaching. I got Breathwork certified and people that had followed my journey were like, I want to work with you. And so that's kind of like in a nutshell how it happened.
Oh my gosh. From such a young age. I mean, honestly, I wasn't even thinking about entrepreneurship back then. So hats off, because that
thank
is
you.
so young to have that realization that like, no, I'm not going to uni and spending all that time there and earning $40,000 a year. Are you kidding me? I'm
Yeah.
just going to go and do my own thing. And then you unlock this can of worms. And I think too, one of the big reasons why a lot of women get into entrepreneurship is because there's no ceiling. You can
Yeah.
earn what you want to earn. Like you are the one that usually has to get out of your own way, and then you unlock the level after level after level. But I think it's beautiful to see that you had that realization so young early on. I
Mm.
mean, I think I was at a total different point. 23, I got married. 25, I had my first baby. And then it wasn't till like, later in my 20s after I'd had my third child that I went, let's relaunch, let's do this thing. But
Yeah.
I wish I had have
In
been
that
that young.
time frame, I've had a couple marriages and divorces. I've gotten sober. So there's been things, that's the entrepreneurship route. I mean, the life route for me was very, I don't want to say trauma filled, but like that's the best way I could describe it. I think I got into entrepreneurship because I was trying to overachieve my trauma. And I just was like, I can become something different. And then when I was 32 and had a massive drinking problem and was still dating toxic, unhealthy men and did everything right. That's why I work with really successful people that for the most part, I thought I was winning the game. And then you end up really empty. And it's like, what do you do then? I think that the entrepreneurship world is so interesting. I think the coaching world is so interesting like you started probably out of like, I need an identity. I think a lot of women that are like, okay, who's Carla outside of being a mom? And I had to go, who's Sophie outside of being like bad and bougie career person? And I had to really reconstruct my identity. I think entrepreneurship allows us to heal, but it is scary because it also is connected to our livelihood. So I want to
Yeah.
hear when you were third baby in, it sounds like, did you say that? Like your
Yeah.
third baby, and then you're like, we're doing this?
Yeah, so it was actually after my second child that I started this later on in the year. So he was born in the January
Oh,
2019. Later on in that year, I actually started because it was after this whirlwind of a time where I just thought, are you kidding me? Like, I'm not living like this ever again. Like, I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. I've always been good with money. I can always manage it. So how come I'm at this point? And that's where truly the whole money mindset revolution began for me.
sure.
And I just thought, this is what I have to do. But it was different back then. It was more for families. And so then I did it for 12 months and then I took 10 months off, hopped out another child and
Did you have four babies?
3. No, so
Oh, three.
that
Okay.
was so then after the third one,
Okay.
literally she was 1 month old and I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old in tow. And I just went, I'm relaunching, but I need to speak to entrepreneurs. It's in my blood.
Yeah.
This is what I
Yeah.
have to do.
I
And
just got
so
chilled when you said that.
yeah, and so I haven't looked back ever since. That was June 2021, and I haven't looked
Mm.
back. It's been the best decision I ever made. But you hit the nail on the head. It was a big identity thing for me because I've been in corporate, I've been in leadership since I was a young age. I was put in management when I was 22. Like, I was really young, and I just the promotion after promotion. It was like I did all the things, but then I couldn't be the yes man anymore, you know?
Yeah,
It was
totally.
time to just shift and then prioritize my kids and my freedom. And I just knew, well, this can't be it. I actually don't want to go back into corporate. I don't want to work my way back up. And that was where I just went, I'm relaunching. Now, I actually only just left corporate in December. I
Oh
went,
my gosh.
yeah, well,
Love.
again, like, different, right? Because there's 3 children and there's a mortgage and there's little people relying on me. And I
Yeah.
didn't and the husband dynamic as well, love my husband. He's so beautiful, but I've always been one who's loved to contribute, and that's just me. So I
Yeah.
needed to get this to the point where I was like, we're sweet.
I feel good about it. We're good. Yeah.
Carla,
Totally.
stop getting in your head. Just do it. Just go all in. And it's been the best decision I ever made. But yeah, so different. So
Yeah.
back to you, please. When did you first get married? Like, tell us that story. And then we can dive into more
Okay.
business. But like, let's know Sophie from
Yeah,
more
yeah,
of
yeah.
the
So I
personal side.
actually just got divorced for a second time in October. So I got married the first time when I was 25. Identical situation. So married for 2 years with the person for almost 5 years. I met my last husband. I don't think I'll ever get married again. I tell my cute boyfriend now, I'm like, because we've talked about it's really early on, but it's like I'm getting older. He's a little bit older. So it's like if we want to have a baby or things like that. And I'm like, I'm so willing to do all of that. But marriage, I just don't know. And I think too, I've done so much healing. So I got married. That was the second time I started my business over in North Carolina. We moved to Texas, rural Texas. That's the third time I did it. Separated, divorced, came to the city. And then I met Warren, my now ex-husband. I was one day sober. I had a serious drinking problem. I was like workaholic, alcoholic, and we just did the best we could. He was in early recovery, and that was like 5.5 years ago. And the reality is December of not this year, but the year before, I just said, hey, like, I was in Montana. I hated where we were living. We were definitely going in different directions. And I think making money had never been hard for me. I think being who I wanted to be had always been really hard because I didn't know who I was. And so going through that situation, and I moved back home. I hadn't lived in my hometown in 13 years. And then I'd only been there for like 2 years. And I'd been away and lived all over the country more than I'd been in my hometown. And everybody said, hey, why don't you move home with your dad? My father raised me, although my mom and I are very close. And so I moved back into my childhood home. And it was the most healing, cathartic thing. I think, I don't know if you believe in God. I think some people believe in God, some people believe in the universe. I believe in God. And I just think God just divinely started to orchestrate my life to show me my worth wasn't on the exterior. And I think that pivoting, like, what's my messaging? Because a huge part of my business, like year one was all experienced entrepreneurs, executives that could be my parents' age. Year two, I was in a lot of online group coaching programs and they were like, oh my gosh, you launched businesses. And my brain was like, oh, this is a great opportunity. So I started really catering to online entrepreneurs. Year three, that was 80. So that was last year. That was 80% of my business. And in October, I was going to do my mediation and finalize my divorce. And I was just spiritually bankrupt. I was so exhausted, so tired. And I just had to let go. I just said, I'm not restarting my mastermind. I need a minute. And my ego hated a lot of what was going on, but my identity and my worth was just flourishing. And then I let that go. And I had a few private clients that were established. And then my mom, we're not going to cry on the podcast, but my
Yeah.
mom got diagnosed with cancer at the end of December. And that's what brought me back. And so I let go of all my clients and I came down here and my mom died 39 days later. And I just think, like, as I'm like, I'm not going to cry, but I'm sharing that because I didn't financially have to really worry. And I knew that I could rebuild my business, probably just like you felt when you had your third kid and you just had like no more moments. It was kind of like God was just like, no more, Sophie. Like, we're not going to put ourselves in just because we can, or just because you think you should, whatever that saying is. Basically, stop doing things that you think are shiny. Like, you have a calling, you have a purpose. You're supposed to help really successful people get out of survival mode, find genuine fulfillment. And I just think that came full circle. So, my mom passed in February, and I got to be there with her every day. And it just was a complete honor. I don't have any children. They say you labor when you come into this life and you labor out of it. And it was such an impactful time because I think I've done a lot that I think a lot of people would be like, it's amazing. Like, I traveled for months at a time last year. I've had all the exterior things I could ever want. And I think finally just being like, okay, this is my calling. And I think that that's why entrepreneurship for women is so important, because we have like purpose and a calling behind it, and not just like, what are we going to build today? Although I'm a badass at that too, you know? But yeah, so that's a little bit of like Sophie behind the scenes.
Oh my God. I send
Yeah.
you so much love. I did not expect you just to come out with that. Oh, that's heartbreaking though. But it's
Yeah.
heartbreaking, but your perception of it and the way that you view it now, I'm sure it's
Yeah.
still so tough. It's still so raw,
Yeah.
but
Totally.
and it probably will forever. But the way that you
Yeah.
look at it is so powerful.
Yeah. Well, you know what it
Powerful.
really gave me? I think we have these no more moments. And I think if we don't capitalize on them, I think that that's where people live the same life 75 years in a row. You know what I mean? And I think we have to be able to hold duality. We have to be able to have good and bad. We have to be able to walk with life's hardship and also not throw in the towel and look for the silver lining. And I think that's what connects us. I'm sure there's moms that come to you that are just like, what did I do? You know what I mean? I have 3 children. I haven't showered in 4 days and what am I? Money? No. You know what I mean? And you're just like, I've got you. And I think that those are the things that make us human and bring us together.
Yeah, I agree. We're all
Yeah.
connected. And I think it's beautiful when you can actually see it for what it really is. And if we can
Mm,
just support one another to rise, then
yeah.
everyone will be successful. Everyone will be fulfilled. But it's more so around that inner peace because, like you
Mm.
said, on the surface, looking outside, everything was together. Everything's fine. Like
Mhm.
everything's moving along. You've done so well. But internally, it was so much turmoil. And
Yeah.
that's what people can't see. So you're probably the same in the sense that the tangible results and things, they're fantastic. Like applaud them. They're amazing. But
Yeah.
it's the intangibles for me that I find most extraordinary. That
Yeah.
confidence, that resilience. You can't even explain it. It's so individual what it
Mhm.
means.
Yeah.
And success is so individual. And you touched on money. It's such an emotional game. Money is such an emotional thing. And again,
Oh,
so subjective.
yeah.
So subjective.
Totally. I mean, that's one thing that I really realized was it was like I made a ton of money and I just kept myself in survival mode because of my mindset and relationship with money. And it wasn't until I started regulating my nervous system and using breath work and like really getting to the heart of like safety I think that that is such a thing for entrepreneurs, and it's hard to have confidence. It's hard to have peaks and valleys that are so high and low and really build a foundation. And I think that is what I see missing a lot of entrepreneurs that have longevity. But I think also what I see is my more experienced clients is it's that other piece. I like write content all the time and I'm like, you are the person that's praying that someone comes up to you at Starbucks and is like, are you okay? Because you are so together that like a stranger seeing it in you because you're just like overwhelmed or exhausted or in self-doubt or unhappy in your relationships or your business and da 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 da. And it's like, but with all the responsibility, how do you pivot? How do you get honest? Most of my clients are like, listen, I don't have time to go somewhere for 20 years and figure it out. Like we got to figure it out and have goals. And we just love to build ourselves into glass houses. We just do. And it's like, no, babe, like that's not going to work, instead of like, come down here. We are all here to take care of each other. Get down here.
100%. And earlier you touched on the ego. I heard this saying from Robin Sharma, and he said, a bad day for the ego is a good day for the soul.
Yeah.
And that landed
Oh my
so
gosh.
much. Yeah. And it's so true because when you have that ego death, and I feel like there's many layers to that, just like there's many layers to different blocks and beliefs and all the doubts and fears. But when you start breaking down your own ego and you do things from the point of, well, is this going to actually make me feel fulfilled? Is this going to
Right.
serve? Is this going to help? Is this just give more? I
Yeah.
think that's when you actually start to feel like you're coming together and you have that inner calm. You have that inner
Yeah.
peace. And then you're so much more grounded. And let's go into breathwork too, because it is such
Yeah.
a beautiful thing. The
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
time I was ever exposed to breathwork would be back when I was like 20 years old.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. But it wouldn't be as, you know, it wouldn't be like the breathwork you're kind of doing now. But however, back then I was going through a lot of like mental health, and this psychologist that I saw was amazing. And she
Amazing.
used to make me do breath work before I would go home. As soon as I would finish work and I'd roll up
Yeah.
at my house, before I'd get out of the car, didn't matter where I was coming from or what I was doing, she made me breathe
Yeah.
before I would enter the room. And it changed everything. It shifted
Oh,
everything from that point, and that was so long ago. Yet we get so busy sometimes and we forget. And as the time goes past, you're like, oh my God, I feel anxious. I feel overwhelmed. But breathing is so simple, yet so
yeah.
powerful. So
Yeah.
let's talk about breath work. And
Have you ever done the 3-part breath work pattern? So we hear about it. It's called psychedelic, holotropic. They're 3-part. I mean, I feel like everyone's putting their spin on it, but it's literally 2 inhales, 1 exhale, that pattern. Are you familiar with that?
yes, I've heard that one before.
Okay, cool. And we're going to send links. So everyone that
Yes,
listens to this
please.
will get access to a free breathwork session. And then I have a course that gives you like a library and it's $147. So
Beautiful.
breathwork for me allowed me, because I was so used to taking action. Go, 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 go. But what happens is we get fatigue. We literally get like just action fatigue, right? And so, as I said to you, I was trying to overachieve my trauma and bad and bougie and drinking and thinking I was making it. And it was like, and I found breath work right after I got sober, actually with one of my teachers online. And I did a 7-minute pre-recorded session and it just blew my mind because I'd really never been in my body. Like I had never, and I explain people, we are in our bodies, but we don't know when it's happening. So obviously everyone hears when we work out, like dopamine, we feel very in our body. So that would be a good example. Another example, when you're holding a baby, when you're holding your baby and you're just so concentrated and present, you're very much embodied, right? You're not in your mind. When we're laughing with friends to the point of like tears, where you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy right now, very embodied, right? The first one is in an emotional response. The other two are elicited through an emotional response. What breathwork does is it puts us back into our emotional body. So there's an amazing book called The Body Keeps the Score. It says we store trauma within our body, within our just emotional body. That's why if you've ever been in a car accident and then you are in something and it looks like it's going to happen again, you're like, "Ugh," right? And so any type of situation like that feels familiar, we want to process that. And the more that you process that, the more that you find safety within your body. Then what's really cool is the more that you do breath work, the more that you start to connect to like your intuition or your highest self, because you're really clearing out space and creating capacity for you to come from that really high impact place, for you to do some pretty deep forgiveness work. I talk to a lot of people and I'm like, hey, we're just going to heal the things that are holding you back. Because it's typically we're not taking action because of stories that we have that are just running all the time. And we're only aware of them like this much of the time. Right. So I found breathwork, changed my life. I was like, okay, I'm getting certified, changing the world. And I am just little by slowly, I do it with all my private clients. And as I went through that kind of last metamorphosis with my mom and everything, I decided I'm going to launch this course. And I hadn't ever done anything pre recorded like that. And I just felt that calling. I was like, oh, this is the time. And so I launched this step out of survival and back into self trust. It's the method that I do with all of my clients. And it's 4 modules because I'm like a quick and dirty girl. Like if you have like a 2.5 hour recording, I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm never gonna get to that. Like,
Come on,
what
we're
is
busy here.
happening? Yeah, I'm like, who is watching that? So it's between 4 and 40 minutes. And I just teach you all about those stories. So we approach it from here first. Like, hey, what do you think survival mode looks like for a high achiever? Because most of my clients, just like you'd be like, well, let me tell you all my great attributes. And I'm like, great, tell me. And I'm like, and then when did it stop working for you? So we go through these things. Like I said, there's 4 modules and then there's 4 breathwork sessions from 3 minutes to 30 minutes. And it just gives people this bite-sized opportunity to meet themselves in a different like state, in a place where it's like not having to figure it all out all the time. And then what are we going to do? And then what's for dinner? And then what's happening here? And then are we going to do this? And then where are we vacationing? Oh my God, did I go to Target and get those like sandals? And I'm like, whoa, and that's not even your business. Right. And so breathwork really allowed me and my clients to find that peace and fulfillment and figure out what really matters and kind of let go of what doesn't. So I'm obviously passionate about it because I think that all entrepreneurs need to be doing some type of somatic something, right? We can't be holding a baby 24/7, working out all the time, or what was the other one, laughing with our friends as much as we'd love to. But you can put in a 10-minute breathwork session and just go, or like you shared, breathing before you went in somewhere, just small things just to go, hold on. And the more we create space in our nervous systems, so the more that you pause, like the 3-minute breathwork session, let's say, that's not the active breath, but you just give yourself 3 minutes. What you start to do is you start to train your nervous system to take you out of those states on a more regular basis. And before, a month or something, you'll be levitating. I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. But you become a different person.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's perfect for everybody. And especially if people find themselves to be a bit more reactive,
Oh,
because we're not creating any space between what the trigger was or what the situation is to what your response is. And I think right there is key, especially if you have heightened emotions from whatever it is. Maybe it is a bit of a shit show in your personal life. Maybe something has literally just happened in business and you don't know how to just ground yourself. It's all about grounding yourself because you want to be able to make decisions, especially when you're empowered to make decisions from a neutral place, especially when you're in a business. You don't want to be making decisions from this heightened emotional state for life or business. And breath work is such a simple thing that you can do to just go, okay, let's just pause for a sec. I
yeah.
need to get back in my body. I need to, again, calm my nervous system down so then you can actually respond in the way that you would choose to rather than from a reactive place. And I think that's where the ego can come out and your shadows
Yeah,
start coming out because you're not realizing what's going on. Be more
totally.
observant. Yeah. I
Yeah,
love that.
absolutely. Yeah. So that's my feeling and take on breath work. And I think you nailed it, right? We want to be able to respond and not react. And if we have any type of history going on, which we all do, it makes it, we start to be living in cycles of like, oh, I always do this if I do this, if I do this, versus like, oh, I can start to create new patterns and habits that really identify and align with who I want to be. Because I think there's just nothing more frustrating than showing up in the same pattern or the same loop and wondering, I just made an email about this, like our subconscious trap doors. It's like, shit, I fell through the door again. And it's like, that can be really discouraging.
Yeah, and it takes time too, So from what you're saying as well, it is something that takes time. If you want to create new neural loops and you want to respond in a different way instead of react, it's a pattern. So what I'm getting is more breath work is kind of like that pattern interrupter for you, for your clients to be able to begin to actually start creating new neural pathways in their
Yeah.
brain and to start uncovering whatever it is in their subconscious to then decide and to be empowered to make the decision in how they're going to respond moving forward instead of getting into the state of overwhelm so often or yeah. I think that's really beautiful and it's not something that is that complicated. So for someone who's going to start, like let's say right now after listening to this, they're like, oh, I've got so much going on. There's so much in my mind. I don't know where to do. I'm just rattled and I need to calm my
Yeah.
nervous system. What is like a quick technique that they could do just straight away? I know I said that I would do
Yeah.
three
So,
breaths and
so the
things.
three
Mm.
part is a little different because we're laying down
Mm.
and all of those things. So I always tell people 4-4-4. So it's also, we hear it as box breathing. And sometimes we can hold the exhale longer. But for me, it's like, did I do it for 8? So I just 4-4-4. So in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. And if you can do that for even just set a timer on your phone for 2 minutes, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. If you want to be an overachiever, put on a relaxing song, like your senses matter, your sensory. So if you're in your car and you're having a full blown moment, like I have a specific song I send to clients and it's literally someone, I'll send it to you so you can put in the show notes. It's literally someone just breathing. And then there's music playing in the background and it's just wild. And it's like, do this song, message me back. And they're like, hate that I have. And I'm like, I know you hate that you have to do this. But when we do that, because what happens when we're in a heightened state, we take in less oxygen. We slow our breath down. And so just from a very primal sense of our nervous system, if you can support your nervous system, you'll like really, save yourself a lot of time, drama, stress, overwhelm, frustration, and everything else. If you can just give yourself. So the 4-4-4 is like my favorite. If we're
Yeah.
like, what are we doing? Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think that's one of my favorite as well. The
Ah,
box breathing. I'm like, oh, it's so powerful, so simple, so powerful. And I literally said that to a client yesterday. When you're in a heightened state of emotion, there are studies that say that we become less intelligent when we're in those heightened states because of where the blood flows out of the brain.
yeah.
And yeah, it's crazy. So it is honestly true, not even just from a theoretical point of view, but a physical point of view.
Scientific. Yeah.
A
Totally.
scientific. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Mhm.
Yeah. I love that. All right. So let's talk a little bit more then around the limiting patterns and how to change them.
Yeah.
All right.
So
What?
awareness is key,
Yeah.
first of all. Yeah. So we have to be aware enough of our patterns to know what's going on. So I talk a lot about survival mode. So survival mode typically works. So my pattern of workaholism really worked until it didn't, right? Self-sabotage. It's like, well, you get something out of that or you want to be doing it. So when we're in certain patterns, like any of those patterns really underneath are supporting a story and a narrative that you believe about yourself. And so we have to become aware of what do you think, what is the pattern? So if you have a coach or mentor, obviously we're navigating that together. I could say, hey, I feel as though I'm not good enough and I don't care what I do to feel good enough. I have the nice house, I have this, I have that. And because I don't feel good enough, I look for attention outside of my marriage, whether I'm not doing anything, but like I'm on social media and I'm being a little flirty. And I know that that's a self-sabotaging behavior that would create a ton of shame and consequence if I decided to act on that. But like, I really like it. So do you see how like the pattern, it like serves something, but it's not getting our full needs met and we know the consequence, but the consequence never really happens. So we kind of flirt with that. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like we're kind of like dopamine junkies a little bit. Like we like to see what we can get away with. And so a big thing in shifting our patterns is understanding what is it? What needs is it meeting? So what needs are happening that you're not getting essentially maybe in your marriage or your home life? And I think that's the cool thing too, is it's like, and I'll just stay in this vein and then we can talk about it in an entrepreneurial stance, but what is it meeting? And then what are healthy ways we can get those needs met? And typically how we get our needs met in a healthy way is doing the thing that we're avoiding, which is having the conversations that we don't want to have because we think we know the outcome because we've always communicated the same way. And so we need to learn better communication skills so that we can get a different outcome, so that we can shift the pattern, so that you can change the story.
It always comes back to that story. And you're so right. So, for everyone listening, where are you avoiding certain things in your life right now?
Oh,
Because it is going to be affecting not just as, let's say it is personal, but whatever's going on in your personal life is going to affect the way that you show up in your business and the energy in which you create in your business as well. Like it all flows together. And that just ties back into life being a mirror, like everything's a mirror. So if this is happening, let's say for your example, in a relationship, and she doesn't feel like her needs are being met, so she's starting to look at things, well, that's actually a mirror to show you that there's something here that you're not addressing. And nine
yeah.
times out of 10, we know what it is. We just don't want to admit
Mm,
it.
yeah.
Sometimes, though, there are the really deep rooted beliefs where we actually can't see it. And I find
Yeah.
that's what's really interesting. And like you said, that's really helpful then to have a mentor who can see it for what it is. And they're
Mhm.
also non biased because
Really.
we're always going to be so much more biased on our own situation. And I
Yeah.
think, too, for most of my clients, that's why it's like, well, I can teach others how to do this and things because it's easier to coach someone or it's easier to teach someone a skill or a habit or whatever it might be. But then to be able to go back and objectively look at yourself is where it's actually really hard.
Yeah.
Um,
And I honestly think too, because I think back to you have to be ready. Like if somebody would have come to me and tried to bring things to me that I wasn't ready to see, it's really, really hard. And that's why those deep seated stories, they work for us until they don't.
Mm.
And that's like the
Exactly.
hard part, right? Because you have to be able to see that honesty in yourself and meet yourself with that. And I think dealing with the fear of like, but it's always worked. Like when I grew my real estate businesses, I was wildly competitive. Like we talked about that before and didn't really want to collaborate. And it's okay to be like really at the top of your field, but it kept me separate. And it was like, if somebody would have said, well, let's get you collaborating with people in the office, I would have been like, no. But if they wanted me to collaborate with other top producers, I didn't feel worthy. So I just kept
Mm.
myself, you know what I mean? And so
So
it's like, it
interesting.
just took what it took for me to finally go, okay, I've got to like be vulnerable and authentic. And breathwork helped with that. Like, but we don't, I think those storylines that work for us are like the hardest ones because we're like, well, if you take this away, then what? Or I can't see this. And it's like, well, but I can see it's not serving you. And I know there's a better way. And we change in teaspoons because just like atomic habits, we have to do it baby steps. That's where people really make big changes, but it's so gradual.
I think it's
Yeah.
because a lot of the time people get really addicted to the struggle. They
Oh,
get addicted to the problem. And who are they without that struggle? Who are they without that problem, that story?
mm,
Because at a certain point, you have to take responsibility and stop the blame game. We need to get out of that victim mentality with obviously respect to trauma. I see it a lot of the time when it comes to money, for instance. There is this attachment to the story
mm,
because, say, for instance, someone who's always struggled with money, it's like, but I'm just not that good with money. How would I even start my own online business? What would I even charge? We get so attached to the story and the struggle that we actually stop ourselves from having any opportunity or seeing any wisdom that there might be another way. Does that resonate?
mm. Oh my God, I have been a victim of this. Totally, because I think I was such an overcomer that I kept myself in cycles of overcoming. And last year, when I was like living in my dad's basement, we had a really nice house in Montana, nice toys, nice cars. And it was like, and I left all of that and just thought, you chose that.
Yeah.
And left to your best devices, this is where you ended up. And what didn't you see? And I think my self-worth grew so much in that relationship, but I also had to take total responsibility for, like, the clients that I no longer wanted to work with, right? And so it was like I couldn't help what happened with my mom, but this time rebuilding, it was like, "Hey, we're not gonna, like, do it fast, cut corners, just because you can doesn't mean you should." That's what I was trying to say. Like, make quick money. Like, you need to dig into who you are. You need to have some fortitude. We're changing, we're growing, and personal ownership of like, okay, it didn't work. I'm okay. I'm in this in between. I'm rebuilding. Things are moving, like people are joining my programs, things are happening. But let's do this in a way that you aren't chasing the next thing and you're really like living your purpose. And we're not overcoming anymore. My word for this year is foundation. It was just like, I don't want any more plot twists. I don't want any more storylines. And when I was little, I was like, I'm going to be married to 7 men. Like, I always thought I was going to be like Sharon Stone of like Casino. And I've had like a crazy life. But I think at some point in time, you realize like, well, all of that is really hard to land on. You know what I mean? I think that's why I'm so good at what I do is it's like I see those patterns so deeply in those entrepreneurs and executives because I'm like, are you having any fun? Like, how's it working out? Because it's just like where can we take ownership and where can we discover who you are? And I've had to do that over and over and over. And all last year was like that Robin Sharma quote. It was like a really bad day for my ego, but, like, year. I mean, that's not true, I gotta travel and do fun stuff, but it was a great day for my soul, and it's, like, that personal ownership of, like, well, only one person made these choices,
Mm,
you know?
yeah. Yeah. And that's what's so hard, I think. But I honestly think there's such an awakening moment there when everyone can just go, right, where am I at? And it's not a race. You may have felt this too, but like at a certain point in your life, I do see this a lot, especially when we get to say late 30s, 40s. It's like, I should have been further ahead. I should
Oh,
have been further
oh,
ahead. I'm seeing it so much, and I have seen it so much, and I always think that everybody thinks that at a certain point in time, or maybe multiple points in time. We think that, oh God, maybe I should have done this. You can't go back and rewrite history, but it's about having the ownership of where you're at now. And then what do you decide to move forward? And how do you decide to be better? And a little bit of a caveat, but I know you said you got sober. Was that a really pinnacle point? Please tell me about that because I
oh,
haven't shared this with anyone other than my husband. But my husband and I are both just not drinking for 6 months. Not that we drink much anyway. I would say like once or twice a month at most. But in summer, we're going into winter now over here in Melbourne, but in summer, it's like you do so more often. And it's definitely a cultural thing. But for the next 6 months, we're 2 weeks in, right? We're just not at all. And he's done 12 months straight before and felt the best he had felt in his whole life.
yeah,
So can you please tell me about that and that
totally. My
journey, I
boyfriend
suppose?
actually, like, started drinking way less, like, almost not at all, because I don't drink, and he's like, "I feel so good." I'm like, "Good, babe." But yeah, so I just when I was young, I just partied, it just was of that mentality, work hard, party hard. My mom was in long-term recovery, so I had that growing up in and around me, and when I was 32, I was like a severe alcoholic, just not manageable. And I just was like, what happened? And I think that all that trauma and all those decisions, and I think that just trying to do it all on my own, and really the only tools I had were like drinking. I mean, I thought that the only tools I had were drinking, even though I was paying for a therapist and I was paying for business coaches. I was doing things, but like I wasn't living in my body because I was
Mm,
so terrified to be there. And so
yeah.
alcohol was like, my best friend, and it was fun, and it was this, and it was that until it started having like serious consequences. And I was 32, I'm 38 now, and I just was like unrecognizable. And I just knew that because my mom had been in long-term recovery, I just knew it was time that I got some help. And so I've been in a 12-step recovery program ever since. And like those are the things that it's like we have to be able to help ourselves as much as possible. You know what I mean? Even if you don't have a massive drinking problem, if you are going through some transitions, I can't imagine what like this last 18 months of my life have been if I had not been sober. And I think too, when we use substances, we really disconnect ourselves from who we are. And if we don't like ourselves, that's a good thing. But if we are trying to work on our self-worth and, like I said, I met my ex-husband one day sober. It was like who I was versus when I was 5.5 years or 5 years and going, whoa, hold on. And so I think sobriety is a gift. I mean, a lot of my friends that didn't have a problem are in similar situations as you. They're just like, you know what? I just don't want to do it anymore. And I see that more and more people just going, I don't want to drink anymore. And certainly if you in the boat that I was in where it's like, I need some help, there's places for free that you can get help all the time. And I've got a lot of clients even from those situations because I'm so authentic and honest. There's a gift about being that honest. Outwardly and in your marketing, which I didn't know that's what I was doing in building a brand because people that seemingly look like they have it all together, those are the people that they really need are people that are like, I need to be honest with you. Like, just like you said, I haven't told anyone this, but my husband, that's a lot of my life. People are like, I haven't really shared this. So I'm like, huh? But it's
Yeah.
like, because it's one of those things where when we share, we give other people permission to share, right?
Yeah. And I find that so interesting. I mean, that you said that I didn't even know that was a part of your journey until you mentioned it. And I was like, that is so funny that you've mentioned that. And here I am like
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, I was like, nah, that's it. I'm gonna do the 6 months together and then we'll see what happens from there. And not saying that I never will, but it'd be
Sure.
very minimal, if ever. I don't know. I just felt this pull to be
Yeah.
like, well, this is going to be the best 6 months of my life. I have a lot happening in the next 6 months. This is the year of being 100% all in. So why not do it and bring about that mental clarity too? Because for me, it's more so the flow on effects of how you feel and it affects your productivity and all the sorts of things. And I just want full mental clarity. Now, having 3 kids that occasionally wake me up at night, it's like that already has a knock on effect. But I don't know. I just thought, why not? And it was also meeting myself at this edge. So I don't know if you had this feeling when you were like, that's it, done. But I kept telling myself all these stories of I couldn't not ever. I couldn't not do
Yeah.
it. And I just thought, oh, what is going on here? And I started to observe all the thoughts and all the reasons and all the excuses as to why I couldn't just full on never drink again.
Yeah.
And it was profound. And I thought,
Ah,
wow, Carla, this is a real stretch for you because this is something, my parents didn't have drinking problems or anything like that, but it is something just culturally you celebrate life with a drink, you celebrate death with a drink, you
totally.
celebrate just because it's a hot day with a drink. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want to do that. And also I don't want to show my children that that's necessarily normal and that they
Uh,
need that to have fun. I want them
Yeah.
to just be able to have fun without that. And nothing against anyone who drinks, like it's each to their own. Please do you. It's an experiment. The way I see it is like, oh, let's experiment for the next 6 months and see how good I feel and what change and what shifts. Not having a drink at all. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And so we say we do it one day at a time. So I can't sit here and say, I'll never drink again. I'm pretty clear on my consequences if I do, because I am not someone that can have one drink. Like I am not programmed that way. I am not wired that way. I'm like, hey, how about 20? But like with that being said, I think that if you feel that pull, just doing it one day at a time and setting small goals, like 6 months when it took me a long time. Like I tried it when I was in my early 20s to stop. I tried it when a few years before I actually did stop. Like it wasn't like this big. It took me a few times of like, okay. But I will tell you that, being fully present for life is a gift. And when
Yeah.
you start to get around people that aren't, even if it's just a little bit, you notice. You're like, "Huh, interesting." And I think people also really gravitate towards people that are fully present because we want connection. We don't get connection on our phone screens, like we want we do in some sense, right? We met that way. But like when we're face to face with somebody and we're present, it's such a gift. And to be that for your children is a big deal. It's going to be a big example for them.
Yeah. And it's such a generational pattern interrupter. It's so interesting. Yeah, I'm glad we had that conversation that you mentioned that, because I was like, oh, I'm really intrigued, and maybe we needed to. Maybe we needed to. Maybe we needed to have that conversation. So I'm mindful of time. We can obviously talk for days, but is there anything that you wanted to touch on that we haven't already before we wrap up?
I think that just for your audience and just for people, I think we always just need to hear like, keep going. You're doing the best that you can. Like if it's on your heart, it's yours to bring forward. And like, it's not supposed to be easy. Like, I think we're told this lie, and I don't think hard is a bad thing. Like, I like being forged in the fire. I'm sick that way. I mean, not really, but I don't need to be an overcomer all the time. But I think having goals and being real curious about who you're becoming in that, and then if you're meeting resistance, that's a good thing. Like, that's awesome. That means you're on the right path. And that's with mindset. That doesn't have to just be building. That's with healing. That's with all of it. It's like your job here is to become the most you that you were ever supposed to be. And sometimes that's just doing the best you can and showing up for this thing we call life. So, yeah.
I love that. I think that's a beautiful way to finish up, and I resonate with everything you just said. It was, beautiful, beautiful. I see me like smirking. I'm not smirking, but I'm like smiling the whole time, like, yes, preach.
Yeah.
So, Sophie, where can everybody find you? And yes, all your links to all the courses will be linked as well in the show notes.
So we'll get the free breathwork session on there. We'll get the Sobriety Survival Method, which is $147. And I didn't say this when I was talking about it, but there's live group coaching. So when you join, you get access, like face-to-face access with me for 4 weeks. So just to help you integrate and make sure you're out of survival mode. But I hang out on Instagram the most. So it's at _Sophie.Jones. You can also find me at Sophie Jones SC. And SC is for sacredcoaching.com. So SophieJonesSC.com. If you find me by way of this amazing podcast, please let me know. Come send me a DM. I'm super friendly, super approachable. I think we were also talking about this. Like, we need more connected women, more collaborative women. So come say hi. That's all I got.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's how we met. You found me on Instagram. I was like, isn't it so funny how, we keep meeting women that are just like-minded, and next thing we have these conversations. It's like, I feel like this isn't the first time we've spoken.
We're all connected. Yeah. You just gotta put yourself out there.
100%. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I would absolutely love it if you could please leave me a 5-star review and let me know your thoughts. Remember, everything you desire and deserve is just on the other side of your own resistance. So take that next step.